November 2nd, 1944, 3:47 in the afternoon. Somewhere over Czechoslovakia, Lieutenant Bruce Carr watches the oil pressure gauge drop to zero. Black smoke pours from the cowling of his P-51 Mustang. The Merlin engine is screaming now, metal grinding against metal. 30 seconds ago, he was leading a strafing run on a German airfield. Now he is a dead man flying through flak. An 88mm shell fragment has punched through the engine compartment. It severed the oil line. Without oil, the Rolls-Royce Merlin will seize in about 90 seconds. After that, the propeller becomes a 400-pound anchor and the P-51 becomes a glider with the aerodynamic properties of a brick. Carr has one option: bail out. He pulls the canopy back, rolls the dying Mustang inverted, and drops into the freezing Czechoslovak sky. At 8,000 feet, the silk canopy snaps open above him. The wind yanks at the harness. The ground below is a hard, dark quilt of forest and fields. He spots the line that matters most, the horizon, and somewhere beyond it, the front. He is about 200 meters behind German lines. No radio, no food, no water, no map, no compass, no weapon except a .45 caliber pistol with 7 rounds. It is November in Central Europe, the nights dropping below freezing. The mathematics of survival are brutal. Downed American pilots in occupied territory do not last long. Most are hunted down, marched into camps, or vanish into ditches and unmarked graves. Bruce Carr is about to become the exception to every statistic ever written about downed pilots. Because for days he will not just escape. He will steal one of the most advanced fighter aircraft in the German arsenal and fly it home. Bruce Ward Carr was born on January 28, 1924, in Union Springs, New York. There was nothing remarkable about his childhood except one detail. That mattered more than anyone understood at the time. At 15 years old, in 1939, Bruce Carr learned to fly. The year mattered. In September of 1939, Germany invaded Poland. The war began. A farm kid in upstate New York could not know that within 5 years, he would be dogfighting over Europe. But some part of him must have sensed that flying was about to become the most important skill a young man could possess. He did not learn in a military program or a formal school. A local crop duster named Earl let the kid take the controls of a biplane. One summer afternoon, Carr was hooked. By 16, he had more stick time than most cadets would ever see at that age. On September 3, 1942, Carr enlisted in the United States Army Air Forces. He was 18 when he entered aviation cadet training. His instructor turned out to be the same man who taught him to fly 3 years earlier. Earl had joined up too. He looked at Carr's file, saw the flight hours already logged, and recommended him for an accelerated track dot by August of 1943. Carr was a flight officer. By February of 1944, he was in England, assigned to the 380th Fighter Squadron, 363rd Fighter Group, 9th Air Force. His first aircraft was the P-51 Mustang. The Mustang was everything a fighter pilot wanted: range, speed, climb, and teeth. With drop tanks, it could escort bombers deep into Germany and back. At altitude, it could run with anything in the sky. 650 caliber machine guns gave it the kind of sustained fire that could rip a bomber apart in seconds. Before the P-51 arrived in strength, daylight raids were slaughter. Without long-range escort, bomber crews were sitting ducks. The Mustang changed the equation. For the first time, American fighters could follow the bombers all the way to the target and all the way home. Carr fell in love with the aircraft immediately. The cockpit fit him like it was built for his body. The controls were clean and responsive. The visibility was excellent. The power was intoxicating. He named his plane Angel's Playmate. He had no idea that months later he would be sitting in a very different cockpit, one filled with German labels and crowned with a swastika on the tail. On March 8, 1944, Carr had his first combat engagement. He spotted a Messerschmitt Bf-109 and gave chase. The German pilot dove for the deck, skimming treetops, trying to disappear into the terrain. Carr followed him down, fast and low, the world turning into a blur of forests and fields. The chase ran for miles at speeds above 400 miles per hour, both aircraft barely clearing the trees. Carr fired, missed, fired again. One round clipped the German's wing. The enemy pilot panicked. He pulled up and tried to bail out to low. The parachute did not fully deploy. The pilot hit the ground hard. The Bf-109 smashed into a hillside, Carr returned expecting congratulations. Instead, his commanding officer called him and tore into him. That was the most over-aggressive flying he had ever seen. Carr had nearly killed himself chasing a fighter into the trees. He was being transferred. The kill did not count. Technically, Carr had not shot the plane down. The pilot had killed himself trying to escape. It was the first sign that Bruce Carr did not think like other pilots. Where others saw recklessness, he saw opportunity. Where others saw limits, he saw suggestions. In May of 1944, Carr transferred to the 353rd Fighter Squadron, 354th Fighter Group, the Pioneer Mustang Group, the first American unit in Europe to fly the P-51 in combat. These were top Mustang men. Carr fit on June 17, 1944, 11 days after the Normandy landings. Carr scored his first official kill, sharing credit for an FW-190 destroyed over France. 2 months later, he was promoted to second lieutenant. On September 12, 1944, Carr's flight strafed a German airfield, destroying Junkers Ju-88 bombers on the ground. On the way out, they spotted about 30 FW-190s below them. Carr did not hesitate. He dove straight into the group. In the next minutes, he shot down 3 German fighters. When his wingman took damage, Carr escorted him all the way back to friendly territory, giving up more kills to protect another pilot. For that, he earned the Silver Star. On October 29, 1944, Carr downed VF-109s over Germany. His total confirmed aerial victories rose to the level that made him an ace. For days later, his luck ran out. November 2, 1940, Carr hit the frozen Czechoslovak ground hard. The landing twisted his ankle badly. Not broken, but swollen and unstable. He gathered the silk canopy and buried it under leaves. The Germans would search for him. They always searched. He had minutes before patrols arrived. Carr knew the airfield he had been strafing was about 5 miles north. He knew the Germans would expect him to move south or west toward Allied lines. He also knew that survival often belonged to the man who did the thing nobody expected. So he headed north, toward the enemy. The logic was simple. Patrols would radiate outward assuming he was running away. They would not expect him to move closer to their base. And if he was going to live, he needed supplies, food, water, maybe a better weapon, maybe shelter. The airfield had all of it. Day 1, he moved through forest, staying off roads, traveling in darkness, hiding in daylight. His flight suit was not built for winter. His ankle throbbed with every step. Day 2, he found a stream and drank until his stomach cramped from cold water. He spotted a German patrol a couple of 100 yards away and lay motionless in a ditch for hours. While boots and voices passed by, Day 3, hunger became a physical enemy. He was burning thousands of calories just staying warm, and he had eaten nothing. His body began cannibalizing itself. Carr did what many downed pilots did when the math turned against them. He began to consider surrender. Captured airmen, especially fighter pilots, were often treated better than infantry prisoners. Aviators had a code. They respected fellow flyers, even enemy ones. Carr had heard the stories about Stalag camps, boring, harsh, but survivable. Meals, letters, Red Cross parcels. It beat freezing alone in the woods. Day 4, late afternoon, Carr reached the edge of the German airfield. From a tree line overlooking the perimeter, he could see hangars, fuel trucks, and aircraft lined up like prey. He saw VF-109s. He saw ground crews. He planned to wait for morning, then walk to the main gate with his hands up. Then he noticed something that changed everything. A revetment sat not far from his position, about 80 yards away, partly concealed under camouflage netting. Inside it rested a Focke-Wulf FW-190. 2 mechanics worked under portable lights. Carr watched them like a man watching a door unlock. They checked the fuel. Full. They ran the engine. The radio roared to life, a deep, brutal sound that shook the air. They cycled systems, ran what looked like a complete pre-flight inspection, then shut it down, covered the cockpit, and walked away toward the hangars. The aircraft was ready to fly. Carr's brain began calculating. He had never flown a German fighter. He did not speak German. He did not know where every control was or how the systems worked. But he knew how airplanes behaved. He had logged hundreds of hours in high-performance fighters. Every aircraft had a throttle, a stick, and rudder pedals. Physics did not care what language was printed on the instrument panel. He was looking at a fully fueled fighter sitting unguarded in the dark. The surrender plan died right there. Carr waited until about 3 in the morning. The field was quiet, a skeleton crew on night watch, nothing moving near the revetment. Then he went. 80 yards of open ground, no cover. If anyone looked his way, he was finished. He crossed it low and fast, ankle screaming, and reached the aircraft, up close. The FW-190 looked bigger than he expected, heavier, broader through the fuselage. Armored glass protected the cockpit. The BMW 801 radio dominated the nose. 14 cylinders, roughly 1,700 horsepower, an engine built to take punishment. The FW-190 had been Germany's premier fighter, feared and respected. Allied pilots called it trouble. German pilots had their own name for it, the Butcher Bird. The one Carr had climbed into was likely a late war variant. With heavy armament and a reputation for killing quickly, Carr had never sat in one before. Everything he knew about this aircraft came from gun camera footage of them exploding. He climbed onto the wing. The canopy was unlocked. He slid it back and dropped into the cockpit. He could not read anything. Every label, every switch, every warning was German. The panel looked like a wall of unfamiliar script. The cockpit was tighter than the Mustang. His knees pressed near the panel. But some things were universal. The stick sat where it should. The throttle was on the left. The rudder pedals were under his boots. Carr had a few hours until dawn. He used every minute. He traced cables. He mapped what he could by position and logic. Airspeed was where airspeed usually lived. The altimeter sat where an altimeter belonged. Engine instruments clustered where engine instruments always clustered. He found fuel controls, magneto switches, propeller settings. And then he hunted for the one thing that mattered most. How to start the engine dot in the P-51. He knew the sequence by muscle memory. In this cockpit, he had nothing but inference and guts. On the right side, he found a T-shaped handle with German text. That looked like it belonged to starting or cranking. He tested it. Nothing. He pushed. A mechanical wind began to build, like a heavy spring winding up. An inertia starter. He let it spool for seconds that felt like a lifetime. Then pulled the handle. The BMW coughed, caught, and roared to life. The sound was violent, a thunderous, chest-rattling bellow that would wake the dead. Every man on the airfield would hear it. Carr did not have time to find the runway. He did not have time to check brakes properly, or flaps properly, or anything properly. He shoved the throttle forward. The FW-190 lunged. The tail came up quickly. The aircraft felt nose-heavy and eager, like it wanted to fly out of his hands. In the dim pre-dawn light, Carr aimed between hangars and vehicles, threading a path through the field before anyone could block him. Ground crew spilled out, shouting, pointing. The speed climbed at around 90 miles per hour. Carr pulled back. The FW-190 leapt into the air, clearing roofs by what felt like inches. He was airborne in a stolen German fighter, behind enemy lines. Now came the hard part. One problem at a time, landing gear. He found a lever and pulled. A solid mechanical thunk answered. The wheels began to retract direction. He identified the compass and oriented west-southwest. Toward France, toward Allied territory, altitude. He climbed briefly, then stopped himself. Higher meant radar. Higher meant interception. Higher meant anti-aircraft batteries tracking anything that moved. So he dropped. Treetop level. 50 feet above ground, near 300 miles per hour, the world became a blur. The forest beneath him streaked past like green water. One mistake, and he would cartwheel through trees at the speed of a rifle bullet. But down low, he was hard to see, hard to track, and hard to hit. Fuel looked full. The FW-190 had enough range if he did not get lost, if he did not have to fight, if the engine held, if luck stayed with him a little longer. For long minutes he flew west. Dawn rose behind him. The terrain changed from forest to farmland to scarred ground and lines of war. Then he crossed the front, and everything turned upside down. Allied gunners saw what they expected to see, a German fighter screaming low to Ward friendly. Positions. They opened fire. Tracers arced up from every direction. Machine guns hammered. Rifles cracked. Everyone was shooting at the aircraft with German crosses on the wings and a swastika on the tail. Carr had no radio to explain, no flare to signal, no time to paint over markings. His own side was trying to kill him. So he did the only thing he could do. He went lower. He went faster. He dropped to hedge-hopping altitude, skimming fields and roads so low that the prop wash kicked up dust and debris. Civilians dove into ditches. Soldiers fired wildly. The FW-190 took hits. Carr heard impacts. He felt shudders, but the aircraft kept flying. He recognized his home field ahead, a 66, the base of the 354th Fighter Group in France. He lined up to land with no pattern, no call, no warning, because he was seconds away from being blown apart by his own defenses. Then he discovered the last problem. The landing gear would not come down. He pulled what he thought was the control. Nothing. He tried again. Nothing. He searched for a backup, an emergency release, any mechanical mercy hidden in the cockpit. The gear system was hydraulic and unfamiliar. Somewhere there was a valve, a selector, a sequence he did not know. He had been doing the wrong thing, and he did not have the time to learn the right one. Below him, anti-aircraft crews were preparing heavier guns. A German fighter circling their field was about to be destroyed. Carr made a decision. He would belly dash land. He lined up beside the runway, over the grass. He lowered the flaps, one system he had managed to identify. He cut power. The fighter sank 100 feet 50.20. The belly hit the ground at around 90 miles per hour. The aircraft slid, throwing up mud and debris, grinding metal into earth, skidding for hundreds of yards until it finally slammed to a stop. Carr was alive. Within seconds, the wrecked fighter was surrounded. Military police with rifles raised, shouting for the pilot to come out. They expected a German. They expected a prisoner. The canopy slid back. A mud-splattered American in a torn flight suit climbed onto the wing. Carr identified himself. Nobody believed him at first. He had been missing for 4 days. He was supposed to be dead or captured. Instead, he had just slid a German fighter into their grasp like a man who belonged there. Rifles stayed trained on him until a staff car arrived. The group commander stepped out, took one look at the scene, and delivered the only honest question anyone could ask. Where in the world had he been? And what had he done now? The story spread fast. The pilot who stole a German plane. The only man in the European theater to take off in a Mustang and return in a Focke-Wulf. But Carr's war was not finished. 5 months later, on April 2nd, 1945, near Schweinfurt, Germany, First Lieutenant Carr led a flight of 4 P-51s on a reconnaissance mission at altitude. Above them he spotted movement. German fighters, more than he could count at first glance. Stacked in layers, a massive formation, he estimated around 60 aircraft. Bf-109s and FW-190s mixed together, high and deep and dangerous. He had from Mustangs. Standard tactics said to disengage, report, live. For against 60 was suicide. Bruce. Carr was never particularly loyal to standard tactics. He keyed his radio and made the decision that would define him all over. Again, engaged. His wingmen followed without hesitation. They had flown with Carr. They knew what he was willing to do and what he was capable of doing. The firm Mustangs climbed into the formation. The Germans did not expect it. The attack made no sense, which is exactly why it worked. Confusion rippled through the enemy. Carr used it. He slipped behind a Bf-109 and fired. The German pilot never saw him. The aircraft exploded. Carr shifted targets, fired again, moved again. In minutes, the sky became a violent puzzle of tracers, flashes, spirals, and falling aircraft. Carr moved through them with relentless momentum, taking shots, breaking away, re-entering from another angle, refusing to sit still long enough to be killed.
He destroyed 5 enemy aircraft in that engagement. His flight claimed many more. Against overwhelming numbers, 4 Americans tore a hole in a German formation and made it home. Soon after, Carr was promoted. He received one of the highest awards for valor for his actions. By the end of the war, he had flown a staggering number of combat missions and accumulated an ace's record of victories, plus ground kills during strafing operations. And still, if you asked what defined Bruce Carr, it was not the medals and not the promotions. It was the pattern. When he was alone, injured, cold, hungry, and trapped behind enemy lines, the rational choice was surrender. The safe choice was to stop fighting the MAF. He chose a different question. What else can I do? He looked at a German fighter covered in unfamiliar instruments and saw opportunity. He climbed into a cockpit he had never seen, started an engine he had never operated, and flew an aircraft he had never touched before, not because he was reckless, but because he refused to accept that his options were limited to what looked possible in that moment. Months later, when he faced a formation that should have killed him, he made the same kind of calculation. Retreat was rational. Survival was safe. He chose attack. Bruce Carr's story is not just legend and not just record. It is both at the same time. A downed pilot who stole a fighter from an active field, and an ace who kept doing the thing that manuals told him never to do. A man who looked at impossible odds and did not ask for permission to beat them.